Hello and welcome back, everyone, to Better Together. We are very lucky today. We have got Naheed Dosani with us, Dr. Naheed Dosani. Thank you again for being with us. So before we went to commercial break, we've sort of have been talking about your journey and all this and where it brought you to today. And so there's this incredible program that you created shortly after you graduated, from what we understand, called the Peach Program. You want to just elaborate a little bit about that and what it's all about?
Yeah, for sure. The PEACH program is a program at the Inner City Health Associates in Toronto and stands for Palliative Education and Care for the Homeless, which aims to serve the palliative care needs of people experiencing homelessness in the city of Toronto. It's a supportive and palliative care outreach program that meets people's needs wherever they're at, under a bridge, in a shelter, on the street, so no person falls through the cracks. It started as a doctor and a nurse, my colleague Namrig. We used to drive around in my Honda Civic. I still
Mm.
drive a Honda Civic to this day.
Aw.
A different Honda
Aw.
Civic, but I still drive a Honda Civic. And we used to do outreach, and the program has now grown and has cared for over 350 individuals in the city. Has a caseload between 90 and 100 clients at any time, and features this really interdisciplinary, non-hierarchical team because we know trauma-informed care is so important for this population, including peers on our teams, a health navigator, nurses, care coordinators, palliative care physicians, and social care providers who really wrap around care to support people. And it's been a learning journey, and we're really privileged to be part of a national community of programs that have propped up in Calgary and Edmonton and Victoria. So it's like we got our focus here in Toronto, but we have a national family too.
It's
Oh,
incredible. Yeah.
incredible.
I mean, I think that the thing at the end of the day too, I mean, we're obviously a community program, but like what we can't forget obviously is all this happens in other communities as well. So that's actually really, it's important to explain that too, that it's starting to spread a little bit, which is amazing too. So, and now that we're meeting you a little bit, you have been called God on earth. What are people calling you? The angel from above, all these beautiful names that people are calling you. And now we understand why. So that's incredible.
I'm truly honored. Thank you
Yes,
very much.
you're welcome. So Todd, yeah, you had some
Yeah, Dr. Naheed, I
question.
just have to
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
I've had two people in my life that have gone through the palliative care journey, and I have to say that everyone I met along the way, every caregiver, nurse, doctor, support worker, was just so nice and compassionate and always asking, "Are you okay? Is there something I can get you?" So, I mean, it's just incredible that these people are ushering people to the other side of life, and they're constantly caring. What is it like? What does it take for someone to not only help someone, go to the other side, but also when you complicate it and make it more challenging with homeless people, because there are generally a lot of people that avoid homeless people, and yet you are diving right in there and rescuing these people and saving them.
Well, thanks, Todd, for sharing your stories and for reflecting on your experiences. I think that's a important first step to conversations like this. I think the next thing I'll say is, hopefully, being nice is a prerequisite to working in palliative care. I'm yet to meet someone who's not nice in palliative care, so go palliative care and all the peeps in our community for sure. I think what one thing that you often hear people say is often you don't find palliative care, it finds you. And through my story with Terry, it definitely found me. And another way that it found me is when I was going through my medical training. I'd have like roommates and friends who really like we do the kidney unit, and they were like fell in love with the kidney, and now they're nephrologists. Or a colleague of mine fell in love with the brain, and now he's a brain surgeon or whatever. And I just thought something was wrong with me because I go through all these units and training, and I was like nothing was hitting. I couldn't find my chi, like my inner energy. And then I realized palliative care was out there. And while we don't aim to reverse disease, the healing comes in different ways. And the healing can come through improving people's quality of life through pain
Mhm.
and symptom management, emotional and psychological supports, but also supporting caregivers. And it was like that holistic piece that really spoke to me and still speaks to me. And I think is so important and probably something that we can offer other parts of healthcare and medicine as well. So that's a bit about kind of how it all kind of came together.
Dr. Desani, I have had the absolute honor of, as a massage therapist, of working in palliative care. Um, I'll never forget working at a hospice and being asked by a family to help lay my hands on someone as they were passing. And I got to tell you, my first instinct was to say, oh, I can't do this. And then, but very quickly, and this is what resonates so much and so deeply with what you're saying, I very quickly realized this wasn't at all about me. In fact, from a holistic perspective, the laying on of hands, the power of touch, and not only for that dying patient, but also for the family who desperately wanted to give relief and bring comfort to their loved one as they transitioned to the next phase. I can't tell you how life-changing it was. I've done it a couple of times, and it was unbelievably rewarding. But I still will say, as Todd just said, how incredible, and why I love even doing work and treating people like you who take on all of this on a regular basis with hope and inspiration. And as you said, with quality of life right until the end day. I just needed to say that, because I think that you're absolutely right. Medicine overall can learn from the philosophy of someone like you who thinks about, which is why Better Together as One, that's why we talk about this on the show.
Yeah.
How do you, with the homeless, help to bring in terms of innovation with integrative health, because they deserve that too. It isn't, medicine is important for sure, conventional medicine, but what about the spirituality? What about the laying on of hands? What about all of that? Do they not deserve that as well, just like you and I would?
Absolutely. And I think central and at its core of palliative care is that spiritual care and holistic care. But with peach care, what we have to do is take that even further. And what you're dealing with when you're providing care to people experiencing homelessness is a population that has experienced a lot of trauma, different kinds of trauma in their lives, a lot of losses, and are experiencing often a lot of grief with what they're going through. And so there's this umbrella approach to care, which is called trauma-informed care. And it's an important approach to care, which emphasizes how we interact with people, the words we use, how we recognize people by their names, how we talk to each other about the people we serve. So we're respectful and understanding, and grounds us in our care. So there's no hierarchies, and it's derived in respect. The second is recognizing best principles that aren't just in palliative care for people experiencing homelessness, but across the population, including philosophies like harm reduction. We know that a significant proportion of people experiencing homelessness have an illness associated with having a substance use disorder. And in palliative care, a lot of the medicines we use to treat symptoms are sometimes the same medicines, the same substances that people use. And so there's often a tendency for clinicians to not prescribe. Well, that's not right. There's got to be a better way. So we adopt harm reduction. And finally, because of all the grief, there's also bereavement that actually occurs. And so when people experiencing homelessness pass away, we have these grief circles where we descend on the site where people got their services, a shelter or a housing agency. We light a flame, we get in a circle, and we facilitate a grief conversation. We cry, we laugh, and we recognize that when that candle goes out, we're going to have to go out there and do this again. And that has been a source of healing. So we all also recognize the street family as caregivers, because this population often doesn't have caregivers. Their caregivers are their street family.
I love that.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
and I just want to say really quickly, because listening to this, my question to you is, how do you protect yourself in this emotionally, physically, mentally? Because it's heavy. I've worked in hospice care as well, like Margaret did as well, but not like this. How are you protecting yourself in all of it?
It's a vital question we need to be
Yes.
asking ourselves every day, and truly amidst COVID, where we're finding that people were hanging by a thread before, and now they're hanging by an even thinner thread. The grief circles really do help. I often help to facilitate them, and I find that there's a lot of healing that happens in that collective grief. But that's just scratching the surface. And I always joke with people that, like, when people talk about self-care, it always has to do with yoga and running. Well, I don't like yoga, and I don't really like running. Does that mean I can't like be, caring for myself. There are other, although I appreciate the importance of those things,
Yeah.
I think it's more about reflective practice, right? And so for different people, that means different things. And we're doing more research on what that means. Some people do diary entries, some people journal, some people, write poetry. I do spoken word poetry as a way to heal and cope. And so I think it's just not the idea is to just not keep going through this routine and, keep running to the next thing and the next thing, but actually pausing and
Yeah.
reflecting. And I think people do that when they do yoga, they run, and I think that's what it's more about. So
Mhm.
not to knock yoga and running, but I think it's
Yeah.
reflective practice. And that's something that I've had to think about a lot and adapt over the last few years.
Yeah.
Oh,
Makes total
yes.
sense. Mhm.
So
Thank you
we've
for
got
that.
more to talk about, and we do want to talk a little bit more about COVID and dive in a little bit more, but we need to take a break. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.